Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Made for More podcast. I'm really looking forward to today's chat because I think it is something we need a little bit more of in our everyday lives. Hello, Dara, and welcome to the show.
Hello, Ali.
It's lovely to have you here. Now, Dara, tell us a little bit about where did you come from and where are you going?
I originally came from the States. I make a joke that I identify as Australian and my pronouns are yeah, nah. Um,
Good one.
I've been here for 15 years. I actually, to keep a long story short, I won an all expenses paid trip to Tasmania in a video competition when I was 25 and traveled around Tasmania in a camper van for 6 weeks in December of 2009 and filmed everything and took pictures and did some blogging. This was before YouTube was sort of what it is now.
Right.
But got the working holiday visa, fell in love with Australia as you do,
Yeah.
and figured out a way to get sponsored and start my life here. So I started out, I have a background in PR and marketing. I did that for a couple of years here through a sponsorship, and then really started to pivot into this space of human development. I've always been quite a seeker myself. I've done a lot of therapy, a lot of meditation retreats, yoga retreats, lots of, self-reflection and deep learning and that big question of who am I and, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
So I actually had a life coach when I first arrived here because I was feeling a bit lost and, I was alone in a country on the other side of the world and got on with my coach really well. And after our time together, he said, I think you should be a life coach. You're really into this stuff and you're really getting it. So I was kind of done in the PR world and got my certification. I got certified in disc profiling and all that jazz and built a pretty successful coaching business. I always really wanted to look at coaching as a holistic, more of a holistic space. So I worked in wellness centers
Yeah.
amongst massage therapists, kinesiologists, things like that. And after a couple of years, coaching people one on one and just asking the question of what brings you joy and what do you do for fun and what are your hobbies? And for a lot of people, I was mostly coaching those in their kind of 30s and 40s, early 50s. And a lot of the answers were around, I like getting coffee with my friend or going out to dinner. And there was a real gap around what people were connecting with from a
Mm.
joyful place. And so I started to just think more about this concept of play in adult lives. And I kind of simultaneously was turning 30 at the time. And I threw an adult summer camp for all of my friends, having gone to summer camp as a kid. And there was about 40 of us. We had color war teams and played kickball and volleyball and had a dress up party. And a lot of my friends were saying what an amazing experience it was to kind of connect back to their inner child and just kind of be free and play sports and have fun and have a play. And I thought about how I could monetize that and make it into a business. So I set out to be the first ever person to create an adult summer camp in Australia.
Right.
With my PR background, I got a half-page spread in The Age, got quite a bit of publicity, but then only 3 people booked. And I was like, "Bah-bow." So
Right.
instead of going and crying in the corner and thinking that I was a massive failure, I kind of tried to figure out what my why was. And it was really about play. I had a friend in branding who kind of turned things around for me, and she said, "No, I think Australians would rather pay for their professional development than their personal development." And that was 10 years ago, it's definitely shifted more
Yeah.
towards personal development now. But back then, I think that was pretty spot on. So I just thought, okay, well, if I'm not bringing adult play into people's personal lives, how can I bring play into their professional life? So I still ran the weekend. I begged 12 people to go for peanuts to have a fully catered weekend full of learning and experience. And it was really creating this MVP or this litmus test around could I change people's minds about play?
Yeah.
At the start of the weekend, I said, "Hey, what do you think of when you think of play?" And people said games and dogs and babies and sports. And by the end of the weekend, after the activities we did and the discussions we had, play became openness, curiosity, vulnerability, innovation, creativity,
Yeah.
curiosity. And so I felt like I was onto something. So started to design really simple lunch and learns and things like that that I started to put into the corporate world. And that was 10 years ago. So I have been on this play at work journey for a decade now. And where am I going is a good question
Yeah.
because I would have to say that I am honestly in a very elaborate state of flux right now. I just co-authored a book called Full Stack Human with an
Mhm.
amazing science communicator named Tane Hunter from Future Crunch. And I kind of feel like I've leveled up in my video game here.
Right.
And so for me, we talk about it in the book. I'm sort of sitting in this space of a fertile void,
Oh, I like
which
that
it comes
term.
from Gestalt therapy. So I'm still doing the play at work stuff. I'm still working with clients and things like that, but I'm really trying to sit with the unknowing of where this is going to take me next. And what am I actually what more impact can I be making? And so for me right now, I'm comfortably sitting with the uncomfortable. I'm still doing my thing, but having written this book and what the fundamental purpose of it, of why we wrote it, is really about redefining success and how do we stop sacrificing our humanity for success. And
Mm,
so for me, I'm trying to take a step back and practice what I preach and
yeah.
really allow myself to be excited about what's next, but not plow myself into whatever it is. So I'm having a pregnant pause.
I love it. There's so many good things that we could go on from here. First things first, I know our audience is going to ask where in the States you're from, because everyone needs to know, right? So, where in the States are you from?
I grew up in a very small suburb called Pembroke Pines,
Yep.
which is your quintessential suburban terracotta roofed strip mall kind of suburban vibes. But I grew up about 20, 30 minutes outside of Miami, which is
Oh,
generally the
okay.
much more cooler thing to say when people ask me where I'm from.
From Miami. Yeah. They
Yeah,
had made a whole
exactly.
bunch of songs about it.
Bienvenidos a Miami.
Ah, there we go. Can take the girl out of Miami, but you can't take Miami out of the girl. I'm fascinated by this because I love the idea of an adult camp. I've got four kids, and whenever it comes to school holidays, although there's not many camps here in
Mm,
Australia, the amount of like fun activities that my children get to do, and I'm like, you know what? I would love to do something like that. So with my
mm,
girlfriends, we've got now like a monthly activity, and just last week, actually, we went and did like a paint and sip and
mm.
did, where you paint. And I'm like, this is so fun. And we're like, we haven't painted
Yeah.
in 20 years. So I definitely wonder if there's, opportunity now for parent camp, uh, parent camp, adult camp, because I think people would really embrace it now, that kind of opportunity to
Mm,
unplug, slow down, do some clay, do a bit of pottery making, a bushwalk. Sounds so incredible. What really stuck with me as you were going through that was, that kind of litmus test of asking people what play was. And it was, babies and dogs and games and sport, which is the category that I often think of when it comes to play. But you found
mm,
something, much, I guess, much deeper, and probably from a professional development perspective, a lot more commercial when we're talking about innovation and
mm.
creativity. What do you think was the real shift for people to go from, it's sport and board games, versus actually now I've activated some of that creativity, or I'm feeling more innovative? What was the real difference, do you think, for people that you found over that weekend?
I find that when you can actually reflect on your experience and how the
Mm,
activity made you feel is really where the gold is.
yeah.
What really makes play serious is the opportunity to peel the layers back a bit and find out, what surprised you when you did that activity, or did you hold back and why? And there's a quote by Plato, which I always say, who knows if it was actually him or not, but we learn more about a person in an hour of play than in a year of conversation,
Oh,
because
that's
play
good.
is such a innate part of our existence. One of my mentors, Dr. Stuart Brown, who established the National Institute for Play, has been doing research around play for the last 60 years, both in humans and animals, talks about how we're built to play and we're built through play. So, from an evolutionary perspective, play is what enables us to be adaptable. It allows us to explore low stakes environments and gain confidence and competence in things.
Yeah.
So when we allow ourselves to enter a playful state,
Yeah.
we really get to be ourselves and kind of, I find in especially in an organization, it's a real leveler around
Mm.
hierarchy because when you arrive in a playful place, your stance changes. When you think about a dog that's ready to play, they have that's what's called a play bow, and they put their bum up and they're wagging their tail. And it's not to say people should be putting their
I get
bum
that
up and
now.
wagging their tail in a meeting, or maybe they should. But yeah, like our physiology changes, the way that we show up energetically changes. So yeah, I think sometimes we can sort of take play at face value and realize that it's fun and it's energizing, but it also teaches a lot about ourselves, especially as adults, because oftentimes we do get in our own way, or we do judge ourselves, or we do hold back for fear of looking silly, incompetent, being seen, whatever it is. So
Mm.
I find that when we allow ourselves to step into a play space, it's a vulnerable space for a lot of
Mm.
people.
Mm.
And there's such rich learning in the way that we can see ourselves in that moment, and also the way that we see other people. I think we shed a lot of layers when we allow ourselves to play.
Do you know, it's really interesting that you say it like that with the layers because I've certainly noticed in my 40s and as my friends are kind of getting to 40 and just past 40, there's this whole conversation, and particularly for the women I'm speaking with, is going like, what do I actually do for joy? Like, what is the thing that I do for me? Because it's been, a decade or more of really knuckling down, often, in those childbearing years, child rearing years, and you kind of get out the end of it and go, hang on a minute, when was the last
Mm,
time I had a good time? And I've found that to be a really difficult question to answer. And it's been really fascinating. But I love what you've said there around like stripping away those layers. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it's stripping away the layers, but stripping away the labels and just
mm,
being able to be okay with, whatever frivolous thing happens to be going on. When it comes to, activating play, I think now more than ever, we need a little bit more lightness. We need a little bit more joy. We need a little bit more, whimsy potentially, because it feels to me at the moment like life is very, very serious. And
mm.
I think sometimes we need to snap out of that. What do you think is, the barrier to introducing more play and lightness in workplaces, particularly for leaders? Or is it around creating that environment? What is stopping it, and what can people do to assist their teams to have a bit more lightness, play, creativity, innovation?
Mm. I think by accident we've created these environments that have an inordinate amount of influence on our
Mm.
mental health and well-being.
Right.
We
Yeah.
spend an enormous chunk of our lives at work, some 90,000 hours. There was an article that was published quite a few years ago about how managers have more influence on people's mental health than their therapists. And I don't think that enough responsibility sits
Mm.
with leadership around how much the environment affects the way human beings are able to show up and live their lives. And I crap on about this a lot on my Play Soapbox about really going back almost 500 years to the Puritan work ethic when work was considered salvation, and productivity was godlike and things like that, and frivolity and play were demonized. I think
Mm.
we have created a culture that is now suspicious of play,
Mm.
which even saying that out loud for me is devastating. And when you look at a human being in their lifespan, we play as children inevitably. And like I said, that idea of being built to play and built through play,
Yeah.
we use play to learn how to empathize, how to navigate social structures, how to communicate, how to explore the world. And then we have this sort of 40-year chunk in the middle where we just start to adult, and we
Yeah.
have mortgages and responsibility and we have to achieve, and then we age and that goes away and we retire, and then we're back to playing again. We're doing bingo and mahjong and shuffleboard, and there's countless science, supporting how play creates neuroplasticity and helps with Alzheimer's and dementia and things like that. So we sort of have this bookend mentality where we play when we're young and we play when we age, but what happens to that middle section? And again, I think it's a lot to do with the way, kind of late stage capitalism looks at growth and productivity and efficiency. And there's so much. I make a joke that KPI stands for killing people's imagination, because we're so attached to success and output and outcome, that the idea of playing seems like so foreign
Mm,
and pointless. I
yeah,
also really look at this idea where we kind of have the way that we play ass backwards, because we use play as a reward. I'll play when the hard work is done, or when the kitchen is clean, or whatever it is. And sometimes our to-do list is so sentient that it doesn't actually ever come to an end.
yeah,
So, we don't actually have that time. Whereas my provocation is, how do we actually use play as an on-ramp to being more productive, having more sustainable ways of doing things, allowing ourselves to feel energized, connected, present, and in flow, and then take that into a work context. I think fundamentally this is not about, let's have slides in the lobby, and free snacks and bean bags
yeah.
and ping pong tables, which is, I think, a real misconception of what play is. It's more of a state of being, a mode, a mindset,
Mm,
that
mm,
we need to create the right conditions for people to be able to enter into. And it doesn't need to be overbaked. It doesn't need to be a six-figure transformation program or anything like that. But I get people asking me, how can we play in our organization? And there's actually something called a play fingerprint, because play is so unique to every human being. And
right.
what I'm going to think is playful is not what you're going to think is playful, Ali. So I think the same thing is true for a team. Like a team would have a play fingerprint.
Yeah,
And oftentimes what we can think about is, what is the team lacking? Maybe it is about connection, maybe it is about innovation, maybe it is about challenging the status quo. How can we have an honest conversation about what we need to focus on, and then find more creative ways to achieve that? And
yeah,
now with AI, ask your friend Claude or Gemini or whoever, say, "Hey, my team and I really need to build more connection. Can you help us figure out a 10-minute activity that we can run?" There's online platforms like Hyper Island, which is a toolbox of activities. There's another framework called Liberating Structures. I have a download that we can share in the show notes of 20 ways to play, which are just really simple. For example, getting your team to stand in a circle and you have to count to 20, and nobody can say the same number twice, and you have to do it in chronological order. And it's such a telling way to see how teams arrive in a sort of pressure. It's not really pressure, right? It's
right.
play.
Counting to 20.
And
Yeah,
that's what we talk about, playing in low stakes to then be able to perform in high stakes. So get the team to try and count to 20. No two people can say the same number at the same time. You have to start over at one. If
yeah,
you do say the same number, and you just see some people want to be in charge and point to people and have them say the number, and
yeah,
other people just want to like do the number all around in the circle, which is kind of boring. And you can, again, that idea of learning more about a person in an hour of play, you can really see the dynamic of the team within a 3-minute game,
yeah.
which is a lot of what I bring into organizations, is simple, really telling moments of, like, we could sit and have a 5-hour conversation around the dynamics of the team, or we can just get you all to count to 20 and see what happens.
Yeah, I like it. Do you want to do it the long way or the short way? I like it.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned about obviously having that play and making it fun. Do you, well, I just put those words into your mouth actually. We were talking about joy. Do you think joy and fun and play are all kind of in the same realm? Like, does play always equal fun? Does joy always equal play? What's your definition around those
Mm.
nuances?
I think that for me, play is the biological, innate,
Yeah.
really, wired. mode that exists within human beings. So there's actually a neuroscientist called Jaak Panksepp who did a lot of work with rats. He was called the rat tickler, actually, which is hilarious. He used to tickle rats and they would chase his hand around and chirp and laugh. And it led him to realize that play is kind of baked into our neurology as much as fear, rage, lust, etc. So, play is really that fundamental biological driver that we have. It's in the entire mammalian kind of sphere of animals and things like that. So, I think through play we feel joy
Yeah.
as a like a sensation. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And then fun, I feel like is almost the the container in a way.
Mhm.
It's interesting. I haven't really dissected this enough in my own brain, but there's a woman called Catherine Price who she interviewed several thousand people across the world about fun, and she said that fun really is a subset of connection, flow, and play. And
Yep.
when you don't really have those mechanisms in place, it's not really fun. I think she says that you can have two out of the three, but you kind of need at least two of those for it to be considered fun. And she, talks about genuine fun and fake fun. Scrolling on our phone is fake fun.
Yeah,
Sitting
dopamine.
in front
Yeah.
of the TV with a glass of wine and Netflix, kind of fake fun, right?
Yeah.
And another great thinker that I've had some conversations with is Kaz Holman, who talks about active versus passive fun. How do we actually be a participant? So when you went and did the sip and paint and things like that, you were there, you were using your hands, you were actively engaged, as opposed to going and just sitting at a show and saying, entertain me. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes as adults, because we're busy, because we're tired, we want to throw $100 at something and just sit in a dark room and have other people
Yeah,
enjoy
that's
themselves
so
on stage
true.
and we watch them. And so
Yeah.
there's a real distinction. And I think we've lost touch with that part of ourselves where we're actively participating in something versus being a passive consumer.
My goodness, I've got so many things. I'm like, oh, time to mix up date night. We're no longer having wine and Netflix. Time to get out the Rummy King. You mentioned earlier about your book, Full Stack Human,
Mm,
and it was all really around redefining success. And it got me thinking about this like play fingerprint and how, every team's going to be different, but obviously everyone's individual play profile would be
mm,
different. And I think probably, and I'm speaking purely on my own experience, that, you have this definition of success that, in the career, it's like, yep, got to head down, knuckle down, let's not make make any jokes because we have to be taken very seriously. And I started my
mm,
leadership journey when I was in my very early 20s. And someone told me once, they're like, oh, well, people probably won't relate to you because you're too young. So try and act a bit older. And I feel like I missed my entire
mm,
20s because I was trying to act like I was busy being 30. And then when we're talking about redefining success, I've got chickens now and like a garden. And I'm like, I
mm.
am just living my best life with my
Yeah.
chickens and my garden, and I'm
Mm,
loving it. What are you seeing the relation to redefining success, perhaps in this new age, in this new era, where I feel like people are kind of stepping away from what would be traditionally the KPI, killing people's imaginations. And, with the introduction of Gen Z in the workplace, I feel like their definition of success is wildly different to the former
mm,
generations. What are you seeing? What have you found as part of going through the process of writing Full Stack Human when it comes to
mm.
redefining success?
Well, I think what I've noticed, and even in my own community and amongst people that I'm close with, when you ask someone how they're going, they say they're busy.
Mm,
And
yeah.
I've been thinking a lot more deeply about that concept. And I spoke about it recently on another podcast around, this cognitive dissonance that we create around busy. And because busy is not a state of, it's not an emotional state, it's not a feeling, it's just this word that we've created almost as a decoy to avoid how we're actually going. Because
Mm,
usually
mhm.
when we're busy, excuse my French, we're fucked.
Yeah.
We're overwhelmed, we're frazzled, we're holding more than we actually can, we're super stressed out. But when someone asks you how you're going, you're not gonna just vomit all of that all
Yeah.
over them, right?
Yeah.
And my again, another provocation is to ask like, what if we actually were more honest about where we're at and how we are? And would we then be able to, number one, feel less alone in that space?
Mm-hmm.
Because I would relate busyness to striving for success. We
Yeah.
are busy because we're striving, because we're hustling, because we're go, 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 do, do, do.
Yeah.
And so if we could start to, as a culture, just be a lot more honest about what this is actually doing to us. And I think we are, burnout is a very hot topic at the moment. But I kind of feel like I'm burnt out about hearing about burnout because I believe the burnout conversation is already too late.
Yeah.
We actually have a
100%.
chapter in the book called Achievement Syndrome, which is
Yeah.
more about looking at the cultural programming around achievement and how it
Mm-hmm.
begins at a young age.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
we're given gold stars and trophies and pats on the back and you're great. And we start to connect our value to and our belonging to our worth of what I can achieve.
Yeah.
And then you kind of double down as you get into your 20s and your 30s and you want a promotion and you want that nice car and that nice apartment or whatever it is. And then you start to optimize everything. You're part of the 5 a.m. club and you time block your schedule until you're blue in the face. And then you kind of start to feel this diminishing return, like that next promotion doesn't feel as good or whatever it is. You start to feel you almost get a little bit of success amnesia where it's like I can't even remember the things that I've achieved because it doesn't feel good anymore.
Yeah.
And that's kind of this slower burn into burnout. So I think that, when we want to redefine success, how do we remove this um synonymous idea of success and achievement? Like for
Yeah.
me, something that I've done in writing the book is redefine success for myself as ease.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am a late diagnosed ADHD single mom with a 5-year-old. I have no family here. My life is often emotional chaos.
Yeah.
And so for me, success is no longer, this amazing business dominating the world and all that kind of thing. And now it's just like, oh my gosh, I just want ease.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that things are going to be easy because that's not reality, but how can I seek out more ease and find out ways to cultivate ease in my life and not be in this constant state of chasing. Um,
Mm.
yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. With my clients, I ban the word busy. So whenever we run our workshops or doing
Mm,
keynotes or anything like that, I'm like, yeah, by the way, we're going to ban this. We'll do a 21 day challenge. And it's remarkable because I find most people are busy like in their emails. Obviously, there's not a lot of joy in emails
mm,
most of the time. But I love what you said around, now your definition of success is really around ease. And I feel like there's definitely a trend going that way. Like, what can I get rid of as opposed to what can I add into my calendar? There's almost like a shedding of
mm.
responsibility and, just busyness in general. What would be your suggestion if we've got people listening and there definitely would be, someone's listening and going, actually, yes, I can feel myself, creeping towards burnout, or I don't actually know how I bring joy into my life, or maybe it is time that I redefine my success, or heck, I'm just, I'm drowning. I need to do something differently. What would be your top tips that you've learned either through the book, through your decade of play and experiments? What would be your top 5 tips for those individuals?
For me, I think the number one tip is to learn how to sit in stillness with yourself.
Yep.
To be able to, and this is not even about meditation, right? Because I know for a lot of people, especially high achievers, it's just trying to tell a high achiever to meditate is like telling someone to calm down when it's a fire drill.
Yep.
So I think it is set 5 minutes on your clock, sit in your bed, sit in on your couch with no distraction, with no nothing. Just
Yep.
sit and see what comes up. Because I would
I'm already
imagine
sweaty.
it will be so uncomfortable
Yeah. Yep.
because
I love it.
we when we are in this high achievement, go, go, go state, we are like floating heads.
Mm.
We have no connection to our body. And I think when it comes to recovery, because I truly believe in doing the book and research, you can't force a frazzled nervous system to rest. you need to recover first.
Yep.
You need to bring yourself kind of back to baseline. And a lot of that has to do with understanding your nervous system, understanding your triggers, understanding that kind of fizzy, bubbly, anxious feeling that is sitting in the pit of your stomach that you just don't pay attention to because you're on your phone or you're on your email or whatever it is. So I think to like completely get back to baseline would be sit with yourself in silence, doing nothing,
Yeah.
and see what that feels like, and do it as often as you can, and start out with a minute. Do you know what I mean? And in the book we have what we call leading at every layer of the human experience, which is kind of this 5-layer concept of how to lead, um, with a lot of sustainability and integrity. And the foundation layer is really about understanding your nervous system
Yeah.
and, understanding how to self-regulate.
Mm.
Because when
Mm.
you are in a perpetual state of stress,
It's
you
miles
you
away.
are you
Yeah.
are in not a great state, and then that's where you're leading from. So if you want your people to be adopting AI and not freaking out about all this
Yeah.
change, like you need to not be doing that
Yeah.
because your nervous system walks into a room before you do.
Yeah. I love it.
So I think nervous system regulation is fundamental to
Yeah.
any sort of recovery or how to lead in this perpetual state of change and accelerated technology. So I'd
I
say baseline fundamental, start to connect with your body and your nervous system and the way that you respond to stress.
love it.
Um, my next tip would really be around permission, permission for yourself to be
Mm.
able to feel joy. I think
Hmm.
sometimes we have underlying drivers of fear or worry or not enoughness where we don't feel like we are allowed to have joy, or we don't have time for it.
Yeah.
So I think before we even jump into scheduling a paint and sip with our friend, we have to really think about permission. What do I need to give myself permission to invite in or let go of to actually allow for that to be prioritized? Because I think if we just look at play as another thing to schedule into our diary, it doesn't, it's just, it's pointless.
Yeah.
So that leads me to my next tip would be reframing play,
Yeah.
creating your
Right.
own definition of what play is for you, because play can simply be going for a walk or reading a book
Mm.
or, again, going back to that idea of fun,
Hmm.
that idea of being in a flow state, feeling connected, those things are so fundamental. And sometimes it can just be catching up with a mate and having a laugh and enjoying each other.
Yeah.
Maybe not talking about your day at work or whatever it is, just, think of
Yeah.
a funny topic of conversation and go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
So, um, yeah, for me, it's really, micro moments.
Yeah.
Just, I think again, as high achieving, leaders who want to change everything, it's just like you just need baby steps.
Yeah.
And having ambition and being really driven to do something is great, but it often just fizzles out because it's not sustainable. So it's like how do you build sustainable micro play practices into your day? Like I try every
Mm.
morning, I've got like a Google Nest in my bedroom and I'm like, "Hey Google, play my Spotify." And I just have oh,
Playing Spotify.
hey Google, stop the music. Sorry, that's funny.
That's great.
Um, so yeah, just, listen to a song, move around my room, move my body, get kind of again, get embodied in the morning before I dive into my email or dive into looking after my kid or whatever it is. So,
Mm. Mm.
um, yeah, so again, from reframing play to again that redefining success,
Yeah.
what does success as a human being look, not as a human doing?
Mm. Hmm.
Um, And lastly, the thing that I teach leaders all the time and have brought to tens of thousands of people in the last decade is this idea of yes and,
Yeah.
which comes from improvisation.
Yeah.
And I made the joke earlier that my pronouns are yeah, nah.
Yeah.
This idea of yeah, nah is really baked into the Australian vernacular, right? And yeah, nah is very similar to yes, but. where
Yeah.
it kind of feels like we're agreeing, but we're not.
Yes.
And the idea behind yes and is really the yes is about acknowledging what is. It's not necessarily about liking it or accepting it,
Hmm.
but it's hearing it and acknowledging it. And then adding in the and is adding in a sense of agency or forward movement. And again, it doesn't mean that this is about blind compliance or saying yes to everything, but if someone offers you an idea as a leader and you yes but them, they're not going to want to come back to you again
Yeah. It's
and
a bit of a
share with
full
you
stop.
because yes butting them just completely shuts them down. However, if someone does bring you an idea that's not possible, you can still use yes and. You can
Mm,
say, yes, I hear this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm wondering if there's another way to look at it. And I'm
mm,
wondering if there's, if you might consider B and C and not just A or whatever it is. So,
yeah,
we don't need to use such destructive language. We can still be generative in our thinking by using and without agreeing with everyone and everything,
I
because
love it.
obviously there's risk and compliance and yada yada. So
Yeah.
to recap, I would say spend time sitting with yourself, even if
Mhm.
it's for a minute a day, doing nothing but be with your body and your breath. Give yourself permission to actually be able to feel joy. Reframe play as a micro moment of flow, connection. Redefine success for yourself in a way that is not tied to achievement or success. And say yes and.
I love it. You've given me so many things to think about. Now must have been very serendipitous. Where do you mostly hang out if people are going, yep, I want a bit more Dara? Where's your favorite
Mm.
place to play?
Where do you find me? I'm pretty vocal on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Also, you can check out the Full Stack Human book website, which is just fullstackhumanbook.com.
Hmm.
I've got great resources on my website as well, which is Culture Hero, but it's culturehero.co, not .com.
Hmm.
But otherwise, you can always, yeah, send me an email, dara@culturehero.co. I've got free resources to share. I'm always,
Amazing.
any way that a leader wants to adopt a more playful mindset for themselves, I'm all about it. So let's have a chat.
Fantastic. I love it. You've given so many absolute pearls of wisdom in here and lots and lots of food for thought. Thank you so much, Dara. Any final words before we say goodbye?
If every day before you go to sleep, you can ask yourself, how is I human today? Is a great way to stay connected to yourself and not fear the robots.
I love it. That's amazing. Thank you. See ya.
Thank you.